Athens! We'd finally made it. Whilst we'd been forced to take the train and skip part of it due to some very frustrating tendonitis, we'd reached the capital of Greece and our last destination from where we'd fly home to Scotland. I'd always wanted to visit Athens, so I was super excited to spend a week here and have some time to explore more than we usually did. We managed to get to the Airbnb without too much bother except for some heavy rain, which led me to absolutely decking it on some slippy tram lines. But luckily, if you fall with a fully loaded touring bike, the bags tend to protect you pretty well, but your ego can take a bit of a hit. We went out on the first day to a coffee festival, which was €5 for all you can drink of some of the tastiest coffee around. I had like 5 espressos and thought I was going to have a heart attack. I also met this dog. It was a nice first day hanging about, drinking beers, and we went out for a very tasty meal, although somewhat marred by the heavy smoking inside the restaurant, which is still very much a thing here and not one I miss at all. The Airbnb host told us to lock our bikes in quite a specific location in the close, which seemed fine, but also clearly not fine because there was a sign saying no bikes, but she was like, no, it's totally fine. Of course, it wasn't, and the next day we found that all of our tires had been slashed, like proper slashed, like stabbed, like attacked. It was actually very scary and instantly such a stress. We called the host and she came over right away. We just said, look, give us a couple nights for free and we'll get ourselves some new tires. She was like, no, I'll take you to the shop now. But she didn't really know that touring tires aren't exactly the cheapest, and we wanted to get ones that matched what we had. So I think it cost her like a good €100 to replace them, and she was pretty pissed off. It definitely would have been cheaper for her to just give us a few nights for free. Apart from the stress, it was great to get brand new tires right at the end of the trip. So it all worked out in the end. Now, if you've already seen my episode about Sofia, you'll know my main criteria for good city vibes are based on good food, beer, coffee, and the potential for the old walk and talk. Obviously, the coffee here is great. Beer was plentiful, although the craft beer places were a bit of a letdown compared to Sofia or Belgrade. The walk and talk, yeah, not so great, because I'm just going to say it, Athens is a bit of a shithole. Now, what I mean by that is that the city is largely quite ugly, with the obvious pockets of some of the most spectacular ruins in the world, but the streets are covered in graffiti, they're super narrow, so actually walking side by side is remarkably awkward. A lot of the buildings pre-50s seem to have just fallen apart and are gone now, and they've been replaced with blocky, grey, mush buildings without much character. It's mad busy too, and cars tend to not follow any rules around pedestrian crossings, so everything can feel a bit tense and like you're constantly about to get knocked down. There were also parts of the city which were pretty chaotic with homeless people, and the city has seen a huge influx of migrants, which seemed like it wasn't being handled very well with support for people who'd landed here with nothing and needed more help. All that being said, I still really love the city. It does take a few days to settle into, but the chaotic vibes, the hustle and bustle, the pockets of cool neighborhoods, bars, cafes, restaurants, I totally get the appeal. For your sort of city break walk and talk, maybe not a great choice, but trust me, if you have time and you can get into the beat of the city, it is really worth it, and I totally loved it. Obviously, I've hardly mentioned the ancient history that most people would associate with the city. Much like Rome, you can be cutting down a street, turn the corner and be met with a 2,000-year-old wonder that is truly wonderful. This comes with a lot of tourist tat and, well, lots of tourists too, but your main attractions, museums, are all really fantastic. As you may remember well, I'm not a huge guy for recalling facts that I read in a museum, but I did really enjoy checking out the History Museum and the Acropolis Museum, both well worth the price of admission. Although be warned, they are very strict about taking photos and quite specifically posing like statues, which is a shame because if you see this guy, how are you not going to want to throw down your best warrior 2 pose to match his vibe? The obligatory visit is of course the Acropolis. It's what everyone associates with the city, and if you read any of the guides, they'll tell you to get here very, very early, which is spot on because it is busy. It's a brilliant day out, and this might sound a bit weird, but I get really angry at old monuments and places like this because I just think it's such a waste. Like, look at it, it's an absolute state, the place is falling apart, it's a mess. Now I know it's got a complicated history of being blown up and scavenged and pillaged, and it's got a whole heap of controversy even now about how much money is being spent to repair parts of it. But my big thing is, even after the repairs, it's still going to be ruined. You're never going to go to Athens and then find they just finished the new roof, which it clearly needs. Hello. So my question is, right, at what point does the decision between preserving something versus restoring it happen? There was a point when part of it probably fell down and people were like, let's restore it so it's fixed, rather than then just saying, no, we must preserve it in its fallen down state. To me, it seems daft. Like, document it as it is, do the research, get confident, and then be like, aye, this is how it should be rebuilt. Then bloody rebuild it. I know that there's been big wars and big events and like thousands of years that meant it's fallen into disrepair. And you know, now here we are and they're trying to keep what's left. But my vote is let's rebuild it properly. Let's sort this shit out.
We need to fix it.
Now, of course, at this stage, no one's going to listen to my amazing ideas. And if people are already mad about how much they spend on it, then why would they support a full rebuild of the Acropolis? But, you know, as Johnny once said,
why not just build things properly?
Big rant. If you ever go check it out. And if you agree with me, leave a comment. And if you disagree, don't even think about trying to change my mind. Part of the way through our stay, we escaped the evil Scabby building to a much nicer Airbnb where we started planning on how to solve our last problem, which was how do you get to the airport with your bikes and pack them for a plane? Get ready for some very tangible information. We'd chosen to pack our bikes in a box, so we needed to get 2 boxes from a shop. We phoned just about every single bike shop in Athens and eventually found one that had 2, and they did charge us €5 for it, which I thought was a bit shady, but anyway, we got the boxes back to the flat via the subway, which is a bit awkward but doable. Next up, you need to pack all the shit into the box and work out how to get it to the airport. You could of course cycle to the airport, but then you'd need someone to relay back to get the boxes in a taxi, which is a good option, but it means you have less time to pack the boxes, and I preferred having peace of mind that we knew exactly what we were taking home and we could fit it all in. Next up, we called around and asked taxis on the street if they could fit the boxes into their boot and into the back of the car. We also just held up the box against cars to gauge whether it might fit. It was actually really hard to organise this part, but we eventually found a taxi that would do it. When he came, he was so angry about it, but he'd already agreed to do it. So I was just get over it and put the boxes in. I don't care if you need to move about your stuff, stop being a moany bastard about it. I went in a taxi with the bikes and Lily took public transport to get there. It actually worked out fine, but it is a total faff. Also, when we got there, most people were just wrapping their bikes in cling film at the airport, which isn't too expensive, and they do accept it onto the planes. At least we saw people doing it at that point in time. So there you go, that is how you get your bikes to the airport in Athens, or at least the way that we did it. One of the nicest things was, remarkably, Aris, a friend from Greece, was at the airport at the same time as us. Now, we met him at Bosta Beach, which is on a tiny island just off Lewis, one of the nicest places in Scotland to visit, and we met there when we were on our first bike tour around the Hebrides in 2017. He stayed with us in Glasgow as part of his big 18-month plus trip. He was on a romantic endeavour to say goodbye to a girl at the airport, and so he arrived early just in case he'd see us as well. It was so nice to spend a few hours and have a few beers with him, and a really special moment to mark the end of our trip. This was followed by a state of stress as our flight was delayed until it was cancelled.
Flight's cancelled!
The flight got cancelled, so we're leaving tomorrow. Woo!
The idea of having to get back into the city and then back to the airport again the next day with the boxes was nightmare inducing, but luckily they put us up in a hotel across the road. It still took us 30 minutes to get there with the bikes, but it was pretty cool because we had a 4-star hotel with a sauna, all you can eat, and it wasn't the worst delay by any stretch. The flight was delayed again the next day, so we ended up leaving about 24 hours later than intended. We got on a plane and thus concluded our 6-month trip from Paris to Athens. Now, I kept a diary the whole time while we were traveling, and I've used it as a reference while making this series to work out where we were and any funny stories, any nuggets of information. And I was really looking forward to getting to the end because I knew that I would have written something very deep, very philosophical to sort of mark the end of this fantastic journey. But it just says, we went for a sauna, then got outside for a bit before lunch, during which We learned our flight was delayed till 10 p.m, so 24 hours later now. Still, we cling wrapped the whole luggage for €6 each, then checked in properly. We went for a beer. Wow. That's literally all it says. No ending, no deep thoughts. There's not even a full stop. It's like I just stopped writing mid-sentence. So there you go. That's it. That's the end. Thank you so much for watching this. It's been quite a journey over the last 27 weeks, making these week to week during various levels of lockdown and pandemic stuff. But anyway, it's been a great experience, and I hope so much that if you've enjoyed this, that you'll continue to keep watching videos. I've got lots of plans, lots of things I want to keep making, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into those, even if I don't have a 6-month trip to totally rinse for content, although I might still have some ideas around that. But yeah, big thank you if you've been watching this whole time, and if you've just joined at some episodes in, go back and watch the rest. There's some great cycling videos, and if you want to subscribe, then I'll see you next week.